welcome once again to another edition of Today's History, Upper Ohio Valley. I'm your host, Bob Connors, and we have a great show for you today. And we have a great guest over here. Cindi Henry, who is the auditor of Belmont County, is going to explain a lot about the auditor's job today and a lot more about her. Cindi, welcome.
Welcome, thank you. I appreciate it.
It's nice to have you.
It's nice being here.
Well, I'll tell you, we're going to do a little bit of discussion about you, so I hope you're ready for it.
Okay.
And I'd like to start with that, says I want people to know who you are, so if you can just introduce yourself and tell us about you a little bit.
Okay, born and raised in Belmont County. I've been in political service for the last 28 years of my life. Started my work in the county back when I was in my early 20s for the prosecuting attorney. Left there, went to work for the state of Ohio for a while. Ended up running for Richland Township clerk. I was there for 25 years, and then 2 years ago, I ran for the county auditor's job. Mr. Conroy, who was the auditor, had passed away, and I ran for the position of his unexpired term, which brings me to today.
Well, good. So you've been around.
I've been around a few places.
Around a few times. This is not your first rodeo,
no,
is
it?
No,
it's not.
Well, that's good. Experience counts. Well, I thought we could start with letting people understand, what does an auditor do? Because I don't think that the public understands the breadth and the scope of what that office does. So
yes.
Just take your time and explain the things that the auditor does, what you're responsible for.
Well, there's many sections to the office, so I start usually by the demographics of how it's laid out. The front office is what is considered the budgetary office. In that office, I have 6 employees, plus my chief deputy auditor. We're responsible for the entire payroll for the county, which is about 750 people. Then we also are responsible for paying all the bills that the county incurs, and we also receipt in all the money that comes in from the county. We reconcile insurances and whatnot for the staff and whatnot, and that's pretty much the front office. Then I have a center office, which is the weights and measures division, and that individual goes out and checks all the scales in your different they pump gasoline and check for the gasoline and whether it's pumping the right amounts. They check the scales in grocery stores, et cetera, and so forth. Then in my back office is actually the real estate division. In some states, they're referred to as a tax assessor. We don't do that in the state of Ohio. Basically, there are about 8 employees back there, and they take care of issuing dog license, vendor's license, cigarette tax license, seeing to it that people that are in the farming industry can have CAUV discounts on their property taxes, homestead rollback that they can get if they're 65 or over and eligible for the discount, and various portions back there. Besides that, we are responsible for appraisals that go on. Every 6 years, we do a total reappraisal of everything in the county, and this is all according to Ohio Revised Code, so we don't make this up. It's all done by law and statute. Every 3 years after the appraisal, then 3 years later, we do what's called a triennial, which we look at all the new construction that goes on, and we set the tax rates. We don't set them. The state sets them. We implement them on everybody's parcels for taxing purposes.
Okay, so that's a lot of stuff.
Quite a bit. Several jobs.
Different subjects, different issues, different things to deal with.
Yes.
The thing you said about making sure the gas tanks are right, that one, they're all wrong because it's always higher than I think it should be.
I think everybody feels that way. You'd be surprised how many don't pump out correctly, though.
Oh, really?
The state is actually looking into adding to that. There's a concern with many of the counties that butt up against neighboring states and whether they're dumping the proper octane of fuel in the tanks. So we might even get into actual testing of that as it goes on, but that right now is all pending in the legislative bunch.
So how extensive is it that these places may not be getting the counting right?
If we find, with the gentleman that I hired that takes care of this, if he finds that there's discrepancies, he tags the pumps to where you can't pump the fuel until it's corrected. So we make certain that people aren't getting
Yeah, so that
the wrong amounts.
station owner gets the message, you better fix this if you want to sell
Right.
gas here, right?
Right, because we don't allow them to reopen it until we check it again and it's correct.
And that goes on quite a bit.
There's a sufficient amount of them.
Well, I've always often wondered about that because just a little bit of a click could make a big difference when you're selling
yes.
hundreds of gallons of fuel.
Right.
Just a penny
Exactly.
could turn into a lot
You better believe it.
spread out. So I'm glad you're
And
on the
it's better
job.
in our pockets than the fuel
than
companies.
ours, always. Especially when it comes to buying gas today, it's just unbelievable. Which, since we're on that subject, what I wanted to talk about today is some of the burning issues in the country may not all have to do with auditors' job, but in helping people understand you, understanding your opinions and views on various things will help them also understand more about you. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you think about the gas spike that we've had recently. Well, it's still going on.
It's very hard for, my staff, we'll just use them as an example. I have several staff members that live, within 20, 25 minutes of the courthouse. And that became an impact on them when the gas went nearly to $5 a few months back. So to kind of offset that, I broached the staff and said we can just adjust our hours accordingly. And I gave them the opportunity that if they wanted to go from a 5-day, 8-hour day week to a 4 10-hour day week, I would say that probably 90% of my real estate office took advantage of that because they do live 20 minutes or more away from work, so it kind of helped them. I mean, it's sad because when you're putting money out into that, you're taking away from your normal expenditures at home, and it's an impact on everybody. It's just not a good thing. And I'm not one for taxes, even though I'm the tax assessor. I'm all about reducing them if I can.
Lower the better. Huh?
Yes, exactly.
Well, that's great. Do you think that would help the gas prices if they lowered the taxes on it? Because there's federal tax, there's state tax, there's local tax.
Oh, there's tax. I mean, it's very sad when you see how much we are truly taxed in today's world. It's really bad. But I know that, like the state of West Virginia, I've noticed a lot. They have reduced and changed their taxing for certain periods, trying to offset that. But we're not there yet.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll have to get there at some point in time because
there's
a breaking point.
Yes, there is.
At least I believe there's a breaking
I agree.
point. What do you think is the biggest concern of the people in this election cycle, generally speaking, not necessarily to do with the auditor, just things that you hear people concerned about?
Well, they always bring the political animal into the room, and, everybody should be in it for the right reason. I just think that, there's a climate out there that some people aren't in it for the right reason. And, it's not about personal gain or personal opinions or whatever. It's about following the law that, our forefathers put in place for us to take care of and take care of it right.
Yeah. Do people mention stuff like this to you? Or
I've had several people. There's over the years, there's been many items that could be improved upon in all the offices, not just necessarily the one I'm in charge of, but all the offices. And I think everybody's kind of on track right now to get everything put in place because old politics are out the door anymore.
Yeah, I think there is a massive shift going on. And I also believe that not many politicians understand that. Do you agree?
I agree, yes. There's a lot of people that run for offices that do not understand the full part of what they're going to get themselves into. There's different levels of things that, they have no clue goes on, and it all has to be done if we're going to work and work correctly. But, you need to really educate yourself if you're going to run for office.
Yeah, I would imagine.
And educate yourself if you're going to vote, too, so that you vote for the right person.
Now, that's a good point, is knowing about the candidates.
Exactly.
And voting for the right person. Now, I've come to believe that many people go vote because it's an R or a D, and they don't really know anything about the candidates or even the office.
Exactly. You'd be surprised how many people don't even know what an auditor does.
I bet.
They don't know what a recorder does. They don't understand any of that. And it's very sad because, I don't even know if they teach it in school anymore to kids.
They don't.
No.
Not that I know of.
I don't know
There used
that
to be
they do.
civics.
Yes, exactly.
When I was in school, I learned that, but that doesn't happen much anymore. Is there anything in your personal campaign that you'd like to share with us that's going on, or experiences you're having? Biggest issue, for example, that you might be facing?
Well, I just hope that the voters educate themselves on what can and can't be done. To me, it's very important that someone that has experience and knowledge takes this job, because you're managing 20-some staff members, and you have to have a very good idea and knowledge of what they're doing to do it correctly and to assist your staff in doing it correctly. I have been a quote-unquote visiting clerk for the state auditor's office for about 23 years of the 25 that I was actually at the township and the city and the county before working. By being a visiting clerk and going out into all these different entities, be it townships, villages, libraries, fire districts, cities, you name it, they're all about the same, but there's still some things that are a little different that have to be tweaked. I just feel as though I have gained such a vast knowledge of all the little tweaking that needs to be done and how you have to handle that it's something that I couldn't have done when I was 20 years old. Let me tell you, it took me years of working in all these different jobs to be able to have that knowledge. I also have a very good chief deputy auditor who is a former state auditor, and I think we complement each other when we are working on things and trying to solve issues in the office. We're changing a lot of things that the state auditors themselves have asked us to change, and I'm very receptive to that. A lot of people don't like change. I'm all about it if it's going to be for the betterment, because we work for the taxpayers. The bottom line is we work for them, and we have to be responsible of their dollar figure, their dollars that they're paying in, and I feel as though we're accomplishing that now.
Well, that's great. I think those are things that people just really don't know. And speaking of knowing about the auditors, we already talked about that. You explained some of what you do. Within that realm, is there anything more difficult than the rest to handle, just based on the environment, things out of your control that hit the office?
The biggest misnomer, I think, in the public is that I personally, or any auditor for that matter, decides how much to raise people's taxes, and that's not true at all. The State Department of Taxation pretty much rolls on what we get, how much we have to increase people's taxes. We can argue it to some degree, but we also can't go in because we know you and fix your taxes, or at least we shouldn't be, and we're not doing that with me. I just feel as though, people in general need to understand that this all comes from a higher place. We're just doing what we've been told we have to do according to statute and the law. So
that's an area that maybe you can comment on is, do people really understand the law and the statute and the rule of law in this country,
No.
in Belmont County?
It is such a convoluted way to determine what the taxes are and what they're going to be. And the law is always changing. There's always tweaking going on. But they have, over the years, made it such a mess, in my opinion, because you look at the value, for instance, you look at the value of your home. Then you turn around and look at what we actually look at value-wise, which is 35% of the actual value of your home for taxing purposes. Most people don't even understand that, and I had to get wrapped around that because I
wasn't.
So
it's 35% of the
valuation of your home.
The valuation of your home that the county does, or the evaluation of the home that the real estate market does?
We do as the county for taxation purposes.
So you evaluate the property and give a price value, and then 35% of that is what people pay taxes on.
Yes, we when we do these reevaluations, which we're getting ready to do here very shortly, we're already started working on some of it. We literally have to look at each parcel of property and determine, what the value is. And we don't personally do this. My office doesn't, but we have an appraisal company that we hire, and they come in and they physically go to your home. You'll get a card or a letter in the mail, and they're taking a picture of the front of your home and a picture of the back of your home. They're looking to see if there's any square footage differences. And then if you as a taxpayer don't think you're being charged properly for your taxes, we have the right to let you file an appeal, which has to be done between January and March of every year. It will then be reviewed by the appraisal company along with the appraising staff in the back office. They in turn will come up with whether there needs to be adjustments for various reasons. It could be a multitude of reasons. At that point, if you don't agree with what we've come up with, then you have this appeal that's called you go before the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision consists of a county commissioner, the county treasurer, and myself, or the county auditor. At that point, we look and take into account any evidence that you can show us. So let's say your basement foundation cracked. Well, we don't know that. So that will cause us to say, hey, maybe their home isn't worth that because this is a structural issue, and we can come up with a dollar figure. If they don't like our decision, they go to the state. And at that point, the state looks at what we reviewed and they review, and they can override ours or agree with ours. So you're not always just stuck in, oh my golly, this is what the treasurer sent out on the tax duplicate. You have rights to appeal and to argue your case.
Well, I think that's a very important thing for people to understand.
Oh, big time, yes.
And I'm not so sure many of them do.
I'm positive a lot don't.
So is there, just to make sure, I'm hoping that people who watch this can learn something from what we're talking about right now.
Good, that's what I want.
So what would you do if you had that situation where you had a problem with the evaluation and you wanted to call them and make a complaint and challenge it? What would you do? Steps that you would take?
I actually did years ago.
Did you?
They increased my taxes significantly, and I took the paperwork and filed it, and I didn't agree with what they assessed it at, and I filed for a Board of Revision hearing. And as a result of that, it was quite an eye-opener, because I found out that they kept saying, well, you have this porch that you didn't have before, and you have this garage that you didn't have before. And it had been 20 years since they'd both been fixed and replaced. And I said, well, I think we're a little behind times here, so let's go readjust this now and look at it. And they were good with it. They took care of it, and I was happy when it was all said and done. Now, that's not to say I didn't have a tax increase, because I did, but it just wasn't as exorbitant as it originally was.
So you would recommend people do what if they have a question?
You know what? Everybody has the right to appeal, and I say go for it.
And how? What do you do?
They contact my office from the month of, they have from January to the 1st of March.
Contact the auditor's office.
And we'll give them the proper form to fill out. The staff will work with them if they have any questions on how to complete it. Then we will schedule them for a hearing if they don't like I said, what we come up with.
So we can tell people the easiest thing to do is go to the auditor's office, call them up, and give them your complaint about your real estate, and follow the steps that it takes for you to challenge it.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Well, I think that's a really good piece of information.
Oh,
Thank
people
you.
need to know that. And the other thing I'll add to this, if you're 65 and over, and if you're eligible income-wise, you need to file for homestead. And don't just do it one day and say, oh, I make too much money, this stuff. Every year you need to apply for this, because they just raised the income level on it here recently, and that happens continuously, and the people don't know in the public.
Do you know what the income level is at this point?
It's in the mid-30s at this
Somewhere
point.
in the mid-30s.
Yeah, mid to upper 30s,
and if you're in that range,
then you can get a
challenge
percentage off of
for
your...
a percentage off of it.
Yes, and the other thing is I encourage everybody, we just went to a new software in January in our real estate office, which has cleaned up a multiple ton of sins, in my opinion. And as a result of that, we're learning that a lot of people don't take advantage of the owner occupancy discount. It's a 2% discount you get on your taxes. So if you're living in your home, you're eligible for it. If you're renting your home or whatever, you're not. I encourage everybody to log on to our new website, put your parcel number in, your name, find your property, and go to the tax part. Find where it is and see if you're getting those credits, because you're due those credits. We just don't know if you have them or not unless it's brought to our attention. So and we would not know if you sold your home.
What if there's somebody who's had an evaluation 10, 15 years ago, and they met the qualifications for some kind of a lower rate for their, but since then their income has gone up above the allowable amount? Do you know that happens? Is it, you guys check it and follow it, or is it, do they have to come to you and say, reevaluate me?
Well, every year you have to reapply for the deduction on like the homestead and that, but you don't on the owner occupancy. We only pick that one up when you sell your home.
Okay, so,
and we don't,
So the homeowner needs to do this every year?
I would contact the office annually, yes.
You just said it was required. Is it required that they do this every year, or are they just on their own?
No, they can just do it on their own. So like if you're in the farming business and you own property, 10 or more acres, and you want to get this, what they call the CAUV discount because you're farming, you have to apply for that annually. We will send letters out to everyone that's currently on it. They will then have an opportunity in a period of time to send it back in. At that point, we review it, we renew it. You pay an initial, I believe it's $25 to file for it, but after that, you're just renewing it. It doesn't cost you anything. And those are all benefits to the taxpayer. I strongly encourage people to take advantage.
Yeah, I think that's pretty important. We're going to move on to current events.
Okay.
This is like high school. There's no right answer here,
Okay.
just whatever you're thinking. Recently, 5 million crossings into our border by unlawful people in the country. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to get an idea of what do you think about these people who are flooding into the country. They are going to be coming into Belmont County like everywhere else, and they already are. Mm-hmm. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's unfortunate because, realizing that a lot of these countries obviously don't have the luxuries that we have in the United States, but the bottom line is if we don't have all of our ducks in a row for them to be able to take advantage of what we have and we can offer, it's not good. The way they're transported here is awful. It's inhumane. I just don't know that anybody has their finger on this enough to understand what needs to happen to keep this influx of individuals coming here that don't understand that it might not be better for them once they get here if they're not in the right place.
If they don't know what to do. And
yes.
That I think is something that's missing, is the government is not organized to handle this.
Exactly.
Nor is the private sector.
Exactly.
So what are your thoughts on what this is going to do to this county, this country?
It's going to get worse before it gets better, in my opinion. I just think that there's going to be such an overload of social programs that have to be put out there to take care of this. And when the right doesn't talk to the left, you have issues. And I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, I think that's pretty true. There just isn't any discussion about anything.
No.
So that's your thoughts on that subject. Next one I want to hit you with is ICE recently spent $90 million on giving them cell phones when they come across the border. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts about giving these people cell phones at the cost of $90 million annually?
A fleecing of our tax dollars, because we ultimately all pay for it. I would think that they would be much better served if they had proper medical care, because obviously we don't know what they're bringing with them or what they're getting once they get here, and a lot of them don't even speak English, so I just don't see the value of doling out cell phones.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I don't think it's a good idea. But there will be issues there too.
Oh yes, definitely.
Because who's paying the phone bill?
We are. You and me.
I just gave you the cost of the phones.
We're not talking about the bills yet.
We're not even to the bills
right,
yet. But why
exactly.
do you feel about that? That we're going to be paying the phone bill for these people who they're from all over the world.
Well, the thing is I find that our federal government has a way of putting stuff out there and not looking at what the implications are going to be 10 years down the road. And there's a cost associated with all this.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not cheap.
Now, this is enormous.
Yes, you better believe it.
This is enormous, and all of our tax dollars have to be spread out and allocated.
Yes, it has to.
And what are you going to do with this? Where does it end?
I don't think I'll be here when it does.
Yeah, probably me either, but that's interesting, your thoughts on that. Is there anything else you'd like to add that I haven't covered?
No, I just hope that people educate themselves on the candidates that are running, not only myself, but for the other candidates that are running on the state and local levels. Pick up the phone and call. My office is there all the time. I'm there most of the time, and if I'm not, I'm in a meeting, and I'll call you back. I welcome the public to come in and see me. I want things to be right. I like to be a fixer. I like to go in and fix things and take care of things and get it all in order, and it's what I've prided myself on my entire life with all the jobs I've had, and I've had plenty, trust me. But each time I try to fix whatever I'm going into, and then hopefully everybody's for the better when it's all said and done.
Good. One more question is for an opinion from you on, just generally speaking, all of the events that are going on in this country right now, across the board.
Crazy.
What are your thoughts about this situation that we're in? I mean, there's so many issues, and you have the fiscal issue of inflation's out of control.
Mm-hmm.
You have 5 million people in the country who don't speak English and are not legally here. We have gasoline prices going out the roof. Food prices are going up through the roof.
It's ridiculous. Yes.
It's and the odd thing is there's so much free money out there for people that employers are having problems finding people to work.
That is what concerns me the most.
Yeah,
You know,
well,
I don't
talk
care.
about
I don't
that.
care where you go. You see signs, help wanted, and it just amazes me that you saw them before, but until COVID hit, you didn't see the magnitude that we have out there. I know I've had half a dozen people retire in my office. To be able to find someone that's competent and can do the job with little to no direction. I mean, I can teach them and they can walk on and do the job. It's very tough to find individuals that really want to commit to working in today's world. They want to work part-time and get paid full-time. You know, our benefit situation's out of control with our health care costs with our people. The fuel with getting to work and back has definitely been a problem. I don't see this getting better. I look back at when I was a teenager versus now and how the world has changed, and it's awfully frightening. When I think about my grandkids and where they'll be at this many years later, it just is mind-boggling to me.
I feel the same way. It's just it's unbelievable with our generation.
Yep.
Work was a major issue in our life. We couldn't wait to get jobs. We started
right.
when we were teenagers. We wanted
And you
to
took
work.
pride in it.
Yes.
You really did. And
Yes.
I mean, in today's world, it's like, just give me a paycheck so I can go home. Now, luckily, I don't have that problem in my office, but I have some really, really good staff members.
Yeah, I think that's a really big one. What about some of the other things that are going on? You got things going on in the schools.
Oh, yes.
You know, people telling us that they control our speech and how we're supposed to talk. Do you have any comments on any of that?
Well, you know, that's just, it is what it is. I mean, we've lost sight of the family unit in this country and world for that matter, and you know, it's a burden that we've put on the teachers when these children go into the classrooms, that they get to be parent besides teachers, and we've put an awful lot of burden on those teachers, I think, that we shouldn't have done, but it's our sign of the times.
Yeah, it is. It's a tough problem, and it's going to get worse because all of those kids who don't speak English and they don't all speak the same language are going into the schools.
Yes, and you know what? Back when I was in high school, we were offered languages that obviously we wouldn't speak in this country, and why we haven't migrated in the United States of having our children educated with foreign languages is beyond me, because in today's world with everyone moving country to country and whatever, they should be able to speak the language and understand the language as it is. And I'm guilty of that. I don't speak anything but English. I can understand a little bit of Spanish, but not a lot.
I'm the same way. I can speak a little Spanish. So is anything else you'd like to add that I've missed?
No, I just appreciate the invite here. I hope the voters become educated, and like I said, reach out to me. I'll tell you whatever you need to know. I'm an open book. I don't close anything up. I'm very transparent in what I do, and I'll point you to the right person if I can't answer you.
Well, that's great. I think we've learned a lot here just in this conversation, and we've spread that word out to the public, so we've done our job. And thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
And really appreciate you being here. It's really good.
Take care.
See you next time.
Thanks.
And we'll see you next time when we have another guest. Talk to you later.